Hello everyone, back to today's third video. So we're doing the ECMWF Meteo France and DWD long range update for today's third video. We're going to go through the next three tri-monthly periods, which will take us from February, March, April, all the way to April, May, June, which will be the third and final tri-monthly period. So just into the beginning of summer 2020 actually. With this update, and of course covering the full spring period as well. Talking of spring, the first video up today was the third spring analogues update. So it begins with a little bit of December pattern matching, and the main point of the video though is that we're focusing on the easterly QBO. So we're looking at springs that are developing easterly QBO springs. Do please have a look at that when you are finished with this video. The spring update will be placed on the spring updates page with a written summary going over everything that we discussed in the video sometime this evening. Also this evening we're going to have ensembles watch as well, and GWV Study Roundup has been released too today, so it's been a really busy day of updates. Hope you've enjoyed them and found them all interesting and informative. Right, so for this one, we're at copernicus.eu. We're going to look at Meteo France first, and then we'll have a look at ECM, and then we'll have a look at DWD at the end of the video. Right then, so this is how the mean sea level pressure anomaly is looking from Meteo France for February, March, April 2020. This is the first tri-monthly period covering sort of the end of the winter into the earlier part of the spring. If everything is working as it should be with these long-range models, then this first tri-monthly period should be the most reliable part of the whole thing. Right, so we can see that we still actually, at this tri-monthly period, which remember is February, March, April, still have leftover low pressure through the northern latitudes from this extraordinarily zonal winter. We have had the polar vortex on steroids through this winter, and it still continues there as we go through into the spring with lots of below average pressure, lots of low pressure, essentially in the northern latitudes and Greenland, over to Scandinavia to Svalbard, and then into the Arctic. Now, there's not really much else to go on. There is a little ridge of high pressure in the middle of the North Atlantic just there. Some sort of weak area of high pressure could be close to France. Essentially, there's not much else to go on, but it does suggest that we probably continue to have westerly winds here. We probably continue to feed in westerly winds from off the Atlantic with the jet stream too. And it just probably remains relatively unsettled and zonal as we end the winter and move into the spring. The next tri-monthly period is going to be covering March, April, May. So this is actually spring 2020. By the way, the first update, first season one roundup update for spring 2020 is going to be released on Saturday, this coming Saturday. So a little bit of high pressure here for the spring, actually. We do get some yellow appearing very close to the UK. Notice the blue colours are low pressure to the north. Still there, weakening to some degree, but still, even into the full spring period, we're left over with the legacy of this very unsettled and stormy winter. But for us, we're under a ridge of high pressure, so actually probably trending towards drier conditions, if anything, as we move through the spring. And then finally, we go to the last tri-monthly period, which takes us through to April, May, and June 2020. Not much to go on. There's a bit of a mid-Atlantic ridge there. Still, even now, we have some sort of leftover legacy of the winter with low pressure sort of weakening, yes, definitely, but still the remnants of the polar vortex and remnants of the low pressure within the northern latitudes. I mean, there's not a great deal to go on there. There's no particular ridge of high pressure. And if we go back, of course, to the second tri-month period, which is March, April, May, which does have a ridge of high pressure, albeit quite a weak one, close to the UK and France, and then forward to April, May, June. We see that ridge sort of, if anything, is weakening. So it possibly implies as we're moving towards the start of the summer, we may be turning more unsettled as that ridge of high pressure is beginning to weaken to some degree, but we have through March, April, May. But again, there's not really enough to go on to be able to say that with any confidence. Let's have a temperature anomalies looking with Meteo France for the next 3 tri-monthly periods, starting with the first tri-monthly period, of course, which is February, March, April. So a milder than average 3-monthly period coming up, particularly so across these eastern parts of Europe, from the Black Sea up towards the Baltic Sea. We have temperature anomalies of 1 to 2 degrees above average. Out in the west of Europe, we've got these orange colours, so that's sort of half a degree to 1 degree above average. And then just to the very far northwest, we're a little bit cooler there. But essentially, February, March, April looks like it'll be significantly milder than average through most parts of Europe. The next tri-month period is March, April, May, spring 2020. And again, that one is significantly milder than average on the eastern side of Europe with those red colours, 1 to 2 degrees above average. In between, so that's Scandinavia down to Spain and Portugal, and then through the Med, we're around half a degree to 1 degree above average. UK and Ireland, actually one of the cooler places in Europe, around half a degree above average. Again, all places are signalled to have a milder than average spring. It gets progressively milder though the further east you go across Europe. And then the final tri-monthly period for temperature anomalies from Meteo France takes us through to April, May and June. We see, but again, the warmest temperature anomalies on the eastern side of Europe, up to a couple of degrees above average. Coolest anomalies to average are in the west, UK and Ireland, half a degree above average. Everywhere in between is around half a degree to 1 degree above average. Precipitation then with Meteo France, and then we'll move on to ECMWF. So this is how precipitation is looking for February, March, April 2020. Again, not much to go on. Most parts of Europe having no signal in those white colours. The far north of Europe, particularly Scandinavia, particularly Norway actually, looks a little bit wetter than average. Also towards Iceland, excuse me, towards Iceland, we're wetter than average there. A bit drier than average towards the Bay of Biscay, and then in this southeastern corner of the Mediterranean. Otherwise, not very much to go on really, precipitation-wise, for February, March and April. The next tri-monthly period takes us through to March, April, May, so spring 2020, and precipitation-wise for Meteo France, still not wetter than average in the far north of Europe. Again, most places, not much to go on. The southeastern part of the Mediterranean looks a bit drier than average. Bay of Biscay a little bit on the dry side, but most parts of Europe, again, are just signalled to have no signal for the spring. So very weak precipitation anomalies for this spring. And then April, May, June looks like that. It continues to be a very weak signal precipitation-wise. Maybe hints of being a bit drier than average in the Atlantic. So there might be a little bit of a ridge here, sort of to the west-southwest of the country. Still a little bit wet average up towards Norway and in the Norwegian Sea. More widely, a little bit drier than average on the east side of Europe. But again, these are such weak signals that I don't think we can draw any conclusions precipitation-wise from Meteo France. Moving on to ECMWF, so again, this is mean cell pressure anomaly to start off with. So this is how the MSLP is looking for February, March, April 2020. So similar to what the JMA was showing in terms of the low pressure, similar to what Meteo France should say, was saying in terms of the low pressure within the northern latitudes. All of this blue up here is indicative of the intense polar vortex. Weakening, yes, but still churning away there as we go through to the end of winter and into the spring. The difference, though, is that to Meteo France, there's much more ridging here. So you have above average heights in the Atlantic, extending through the Atlantic into much of western, central and southwestern Europe too. The jet stream's a bit further northwards. It looks like that should be a little bit more settled, really, for the UK and for Ireland. It looks like you've got more influence from low pressure there as we're going into the beginning of the spring. A little bit more influence from high pressure, I should say. Then go through to the next tri-month period, which is March, April and May, the spring of 2020. It's looking like this, lots of low pressure to our north. High pressure is sitting across central parts of Europe now. A little bit of a weakening of the high pressure, really. So maybe, I mean, it's very inconclusive. but still a little bit of a reach there close to the UK, but the centre of it looks like it's shifted a bit further eastwards. Still the legacy of the decaying polar vortex. I imagine that's near normal, really, in terms of the overall pattern of the spring, which would see drier and probably more unsettled conditions alternating with one another. Certainly not particularly exciting. And then the final trimester period gets us through to April, May and June. And a further weakening of that ridge. I mean, we still have very slight high pressure covering most central and western parts of Europe. A stronger ridge over towards Newfoundland, I suppose. Still the legacy of the low pressure of polar vortex with northern latitudes. Not much changing really from tri-monthly period to tri-monthly period. There could be a trough of low pressure through here. I think essentially just near normal conditions probably, and not particularly exciting from a pressure perspective with the ECM. It's a temperature anomaly from ECMWF. So again, most parts of Europe for February, March, April are warmer than average. A little bit more so compared to what the Meteo France was showing. So this red area, which is 1 to 2 degrees above average, is further west, covering most of northern, central, and indeed Western Europe too. The orange colours are across UK, France and Spain and Portugal. The yellow colours are across Ireland. So all round just a little bit warmer by a degree or so across most parts of Europe compared to Meteo France for February, March, April. Very mild 3-monthly period indeed. March, April, May looks like that. So again, above average temperatures, especially in this eastern part of Europe, 1 to 2 degrees above average. Most other areas around sort of half a degree to 1 degree above average. And then the last tri-monthly period looks like that. Bit of a change there in that the far north of Europe up here and into the northwest of Russia moving towards no signal. And generally the red colours are disappearing a little bit, so we find that the warmest anomalies look like they're moving down towards the Mediterranean. Actually, hottest conditions, the start of the summer in the Med. Otherwise, again, around a degree above average, so still mild on average in most parts of Europe, but just by the time we get to that last tri-month period, just maybe starting to cool down a little bit across Europe. Precipitation anomalies with ECM for February, March, April. Again, similar to what the Meteo France model was showing, but takes it a bit further. So most of Northern Europe is wetter than average here. Remember that with Meteo France, it was really restricted to Norway and the north of Scandinavia. But this model has most of Northern Europe looking wetter than average. When we come down in central parts of Europe, really it's a case of no signal. Drier than average signal, similar to Meteo France, that southeastern part of the Mediterranean. Spring 2020 looks like this, precipitation-wise, so not as unsettled across northern Europe, but still a bit wetter than average up here, and potentially into the north of UK as well. Drier than average through much of the Mediterranean, so early summer gets going down in the Med perhaps. Otherwise, again, no signal. Signals are too weak to be able to draw any conclusions precipitation-wise. And then the final tri-month period for April, May, June looks like that. So again, we're looking at a dry sort of start to the summer, seemingly, through much of the Med. If you've got a holiday planned to anywhere in the Mediterranean in June, this could be pretty good news. You could have a really dry and hot start to your summer holiday down there in the Med in June. But remember, this is a long way off. It's the third tri-monthly period, so it's very unreliable. But it does look as though there's a strong signal for the Med to be very dry. Further northwards, we find that it's wetter than average around the Baltic Sea into west of Russia, and then back towards southern parts of Scandinavia. Otherwise, again, it's a case of no signal through most of the central parts of Europe and for much of the UK and Ireland as well. So precipitation-wise, the signals are weaker when we come northwards of the Med until we get into this unsettled stuff in the far north and northeast of Europe. And then finally, we've got the DWD. So this is what the mean cell pressure anomaly looks like from DWD for February, March, April. Still unsettled, so all models agree that there's no quick breakdown to this intense polar vortex and unsettled winter that we've had. It's still churning away there with the jet stream as we're going into the end of winter and even into the spring as well. So that does imply unsettled conditions for this tri-monthly period in the northwest of Europe. Next tri-monthly period is for spring 2020, and still the low pressure is there up towards Greenland and the North Atlantic. Again, otherwise there's not much of a signal to go on. Looks a little bit more unsettled though for the spring, I think, with this model compared to the other two for us and for Ireland as well. And still quite unsettled even into April, May, June. So even then we've got low pressure close to Iceland and Greenland, a ridge in the middle of the Atlantic. You would expect to still be bringing in some influence from the jet stream. Still generally quite unsettled, excuse me, as we're going into the start of the summer of 2020 with DWD. DWD temperature anomalies for February, March, April, milder than average again. So we haven't seen any cold average temperature anomalies anywhere except in the North Atlantic, really, on these charts so far. Warmest thermometer average in the north of Europe, 1 to 2 degrees above average. Otherwise, most other areas around a degree above average. Then March, April, May. So that warm and average anomaly, or the warmest anomaly, this red area, shrinks a little bit for the spring. Otherwise, again, most places around a degree above average with the DWD. And then that's how we finish up in April, May, June. So still, most places are milder than average. For the UK and Ireland, we're around half a degree above average. So we're quite close to average at this point. Notice it's cold in the North Atlantic. Otherwise, most other areas 1 to 2 degrees above average. Looks particularly warm through central parts of Spain and over on the eastern side of Europe for April, May, June. Finally, precipitation with the DWD. So, yes, this confirms that for the UK and Ireland, it's quite an unsettled start for February, March, April with above average precipitation. Otherwise, not much else going. A bit drier than average in the east of Europe, a little bit drier than average close to Spain and Portugal. Otherwise, near normal or no signal. Next tri-monthly period for March, April, May, spring 2020. This does look more unsettled for the spring compared to the other two for the UK and Ireland, with above average precipitation forecast as the jet stream and the low pressures continue to move in across the Atlantic. Drier than average through North Africa and southern parts of Spain. And then that's how we finish up for April, May, June. And we look unsettled actually here. So definitely out of the 3 months, the DWD is the most unsettled going into the start of the summer. Still above average rainfall for the UK and Ireland. It does hint that much of the Mediterranean, most similar to particularly the ECM, is going drier here. So maybe the case that we're going to have strong ridging down across southern parts of Europe late in the spring into the earlier part of the summer. Lots of high pressure up there. But still with plenty of low pressure around here. And if that happens, we will have quite a strong sort of jet stream. Keep the heat bottled up down in the Med. The northern parts of Europe will be quite cooler than the model actually was showing with its temperature anomaly. Of course, that's all very speculative because it's a really long way off. We're talking about April, May and June as well, and we're only in January, so there's time for that to change. But I think the main takeaway is that through the early part of the period, which is kind of at the end of winter and into the earlier part of the spring, it's likely to stay quite westerly. It's likely to stay quite unsettled, with low pressure continuing to churn away within the northern latitudes around Greenland and Iceland, as it has done throughout the whole of this winter. So unsettled conditions set to continue even into the start of the spring. There may be some sort of idea of higher pressure building as the spring progresses. You would expect that because spring tends to be one of the tends to be the main season that's dominated by high pressure. Actually, it's our driest season on average in the spring. We tend to get more aware of easy winds as well, though there's very little sign of that in this update. But you would expect the spring to turn drier, and then maybe a little bit of a hint there that while southern Europe goes drier as we get towards a later spring period, northern Europe could actually start turning more unsettled again, maybe. We shall see, and all will be revealed next month when we'll be going a little bit further into the summer. I think we'll cover the tri-monthly period of May, June, July, with next month's update from the ECMWF, Meteo France, and DWD season models. So that'll be next month. Don't forget to check out the spring analogs update. It's quite an interesting watch, looking at the QBO with that one. GWV Sonic Roundup was released as well a couple of hours ago, so have a watch of that if you'd like to do that. And of course, got an Ensembles watch coming up for you tonight as well. Right, that's all for now though, and thanks for watching.